The stars burned cold above Prime, the jewel world at the heart of the Empire. Queen stood at the window of her throne room, looking out at the night sky. Somewhere out there, her daughter was fighting a war that seemed to have no end. Princess had left 3 months ago, leading the Fifth Fleet into battle against the Swarm. There were monsters, really. Not like the other species in the galaxy who could talk and make deals. The Swarm only knew how to consume and destroy. They swept through star systems like a disease, leaving nothing behind but dead worlds. Touched the glass with her fingertips. It was cold, like everything felt these days. She ruled 17 star systems, commanded billions of lives, but she could not protect the one person who mattered most. A chime sounded. Admiral entered the throne room, his face grave. Knew that look. She had seen it before when other mothers lost their children to this war, but surely not her. "Your Majesty," said, his voice careful and quiet, "we have received reports from the nebula." Turned slowly. Her hands were steady, her face calm. A queen could not show weakness even when her world was ending. "Tell me." There was a battle. The ambushed the Fifth Fleet near the nebula's edge. Princess led a counterattack to allow the fleet to escape. Paused. His next words came slowly, like they hurt to say. "Her flagship took heavy fire. The ship was destroyed. We detected no escape pods, no survivors." The throne room was silent. Outside, the city lights twinkled peacefully, unaware that their princess was gone. Felt something crack inside her chest, but her face remained smooth as stone. "How many ships did we lose?" she asked. 43 vessels, Your Majesty. But the rest of the fleet survived because of the princess's actions. She saved thousands of lives." Nodded once. "Send my gratitude to the families of all who fell. Prepare a memorial service for the honored dead. The princess will be remembered among the heroes of our people." Bowed and left. Only when the doors closed did allow herself to move. She walked to her private chambers, her steps mechanical. Inside, away from all eyes, she finally stopped. The room was too quiet. She looked at the small things had left behind. A training sword from her youth. A picture of them together from 10 years ago, when first joined the military. Her daughter's smile in that image was bright and full of hope. Sat on the edge of her bed and stared at nothing. Queens did not cry. Queens did not break. But she was also a mother, and her child was gone. The next morning she addressed the Empire. Her face appeared on screens across 17 worlds. "The people have suffered a great loss," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Princess, commander of the Fifth Fleet, has fallen in battle against the Swarm. She gave her life so that others might live. Her sacrifice will never be forgotten." The Empire mourned. For 30 days no music played in the streets. People wore white, the color of grief. Messages of sympathy poured in from across the galaxy, from species both allied and neutral. But the war did not stop for grief. They did not care about mourning periods or ceremonies. They kept coming, kept consuming. Threw herself into her duties, working 18 hours a day, approving troop movements and resource allocations. If she stayed busy, she did not have to think. If she did not think, she did not have to feel. Weeks passed. The memorial service was held in the Great Hall of Ancestors. Thousands attended. Ceremonial blade was placed on display, representing the warrior she had been. There was no body to bury, so they burned incense and spoke prayers to guide her spirit home. Stood through it all, straight and dignified. She accepted condolences from generals and diplomats. She thanked them for their kind words. And when it was over, she returned to the palace and tried to continue living. But something strange began to happen, started having dreams. In them she saw alive. Not the strong warrior princess, but someone smaller, hurt, trapped in darkness. Was calling for her, reaching out with trembling hands. The first time, woke in the middle of the night, her heart racing. It was just grief, she told herself. The mind playing tricks. But the dreams kept coming night after night. Always the same, was alive, needed her. During the day, tried to ignore it. Her advisors noticed she looked tired but said nothing. What could they say? The queen had lost her only child. Of course she was not sleeping well. But the dreams grew stronger, more vivid, began to feel something she had not felt in weeks, hope. Dangerous, foolish hope that refused to die. One night she summoned Admiral to her private study. The debris field she said, was it thoroughly searched? Looked uncomfortable. Your Majesty, we performed standard reconnaissance, but the area is deep in contested space. The control that region now. To mount a proper search would require a full military operation, which we cannot spare, finished. She knew the strategic situation. Every ship was needed elsewhere. The Empire was stretched thin, fighting on a dozen fronts. There was no sign of survivors, Your Majesty said gently. The explosion was catastrophic. Even if escape pods launched, they would have been caught in the blast radius. Said nothing for a long moment. Then she dismissed him. Alone again, she looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the cold and dark, she felt her daughter's presence. Logic said was dead. The evidence was clear, but a mother's heart knew things that logic could not explain. Still, what could she do? She had an empire to protect, a war to fight. She could not send ships and soldiers on a rescue mission based on dreams. That would be madness. That would be the action of a desperate mother, not a wise queen. So did the only thing she could do. She ruled. She led. She made the hard decisions that kept her people safe. But every night she dreamed of her daughter in the darkness, and every morning she woke with tears on her face that she wiped away before anyone could see. The stars burned cold, and the war continued, and Queen waited for a miracle she knew would never come. Hated the nebula. The place was a graveyard, full of twisted metal and frozen bodies spinning through space. But graveyards meant salvage, and salvage meant money. That was how life worked on the frontier. He guided his ship, the Wildflower, through the debris field with practiced ease. The vessel was small, a modified corvette that had seen better days, had bought it cheap and fixed it himself. It was not pretty, but it was fast and it was his. Come on, he muttered, watching his scanner screen. Show me something good. Was human, which meant most other species thought he was either crazy or stupid. Humans had only been in space for 200 years, practically bobbies compared to empires like the. They did not have the biggest ships or the best technology. What they had was stubbornness and a willingness to go places nobody else would. The scanner beeped, leaned forward studying the reading. There, deep in the asteroid field, a signal, faint but definitely there, some kind of emergency beacon. Most salvagers would have ignored it. The signal was coming from inside territory where the swarm's patrol ships hunted anything that moved. Going in there was asking to die. But had a rule: if someone was calling for help, you answered. Simple as that. He adjusted course, pushing the Wildflower deeper into the nebula. The asteroids got thicker here, forcing him to slow down and weave between them. His hands moved across the controls with easy confidence. He had been flying since he was 16, running cargo on Earth's moon before he ever left the solar system. The beacon led him to a ship, or what was left of one. It was huge, some kind of prison transport from the looks of it. Design, all sharp angles and dark metal. Half of it was blown apart and the rest was barely holding together. Well, that's cheerful, said to himself. He ran a scan. No power, no life support. But that beacon was still transmitting from somewhere inside. He suited up, checked his weapons, and launched himself across the gap in his EVA gear. The prison ship's hull was cold and dead under his boots. He found an airlock that was partially open and squeezed through. Inside was worse than he expected. The corridors were dark except for his helmet light. Bodies floated in the zero gravity, drones, deactivated and drifting. Pushed past them, following the beacon's signal deeper into the ship. They did not take prisoners to be nice. They took them to study, to break, to figure out how other species worked, had heard the stories. He tried not to think about what he might find. The beacon led him to the detention level. The cells here were small and brutal, designed to hold one person in complete isolation. Most were empty, their occupants long dead. But one cell still had power, a dim red glow coming from its door panel. Access the controls and force the door open. His helmet light swept the small space inside. There was a person in there, a woman curled up in the corner. She was not moving. "Hey," said his voice gentle. "Hey, can you hear me?" No response. He moved closer, checking for signs of life. She was breathing barely. Her body was covered in injuries, some old and some new. She wore the remains of military armor, the kind recognized as design. The armor had been high quality once, but now it was broken and burned. Okay, you're alive," muttered. "That's good, let's keep you that way." He carefully lifted her. She was lighter than he expected, like she had not eaten in weeks. Her head lolled against his shoulder. In his helmet light he could see her face. Young, probably late 20s. There were scars on her cheeks that looked like they came from torture. Felt a cold anger settle in his gut. Whatever they had done to her, it had been bad. Getting her back to the wildflower took 20 minutes of careful maneuvering. Twice he had to hide as patrol drones passed nearby. When he finally got her aboard his ship, he sealed the airlock and immediately headed for the medical bay. The medical pod was old but functional, stripped away what was left of her armor and got her inside. The machine hummed to life, running diagnostics. The readout made him wince. Malnutrition, dehydration, multiple fractures, signs of experimentation. They had been testing something on her, probably trying to figure out biology. "You're one tough lady," said quietly. "Don't die on me now." He set the medical pod to do what it could and collapsed into his chair. His hands were shaking from adrenaline. Close calls always did that to him. The wildflower was already moving, putting distance between them and the territory. Set a course for the nearest neutral station, then went back to check on his passenger. She was unconscious but stable. The medical pod had given her fluids and nutrients, was working on the broken bones. It would take days, maybe weeks, for her to fully recover, if she recovered at all. Sat beside the pod and studied her face. Who was she? A soldier, obviously, but how had she ended up in a prison ship, and how long had she been there? He pulled up the registration data from her armor fragments. The codes were military, high-level, Fifth Fleet. That made sense. There had been a big battle here months ago, but most of the data was corrupted or locked behind security protocols he could not break. Mystery Woman said, "Great." Over the next 3 days, he kept the ship moving through neutral space, avoiding main trade routes. The woman stayed unconscious, lost in whatever nightmares they had given her. Sometimes she would thrash in the medical pod, crying out in a language did not understand. He would sit with her during those times, talking quietly, hopping. His voice gave her something to hold on to. On the 4th day, she woke up. Was in the cockpit when he heard the medical pod alarm. He rushed back to find her sitting up, her eyes wild and confused. She saw him and immediately tried to get out, fell, and collapsed on the floor. "Whoa, easy," knelt beside her, hands up to show he meant no harm. "You're safe, you're on my ship. I found you in that prison transport." She stared at him, breathing hard. Her eyes focused on his face, taking in his features. Human. She had probably never seen a human up close before. "Who?" Her voice was a croak, rough from disuse. "Who are you?" "Name's I'm a salvager, found your beacon and pulled you out." He offered her a water bottle. "You've been through hell, take it slow." She took the water with shaking hands and drank. Some of the panic left her eyes, replaced by exhaustion. "Where are we?" "Neutral space, heading for a safe port. You need medical attention beyond what my pod can do." He paused. "What's your name?" She hesitated. For a long moment she just looked at him, weighing something in her mind. Finally, she said, "Well, you're lucky to be alive. That prison ship was a nightmare," stood and offered his hand. "Can you stand?" She took his hand and let him help her up. She was unsteady but stubborn. He could see the pride in the way she held herself, even weakened like this. "I need to get to Prime," she said. Blinked. "That's Empire territory. That's weeks away through contested space." "I know where it is." Her voice was stronger now, commanding. "Can you take me there?" "Lady, I'm a salvager, not a taxi service." But even as he said it, knew he was going to do it. Something about her, the way she looked at him, told him this was important. More important than salvage or money. "Please," said quietly, "I have to get home." Sighed, "Yeah, okay, but it won't be easy. We'll need to avoid patrols, find safe routes." He smiled slightly. "Good thing I'm great at sneaking around." For the first time, his expression softened just a little. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We've got a long trip ahead." The first week was hard. Stayed in the small passenger cabin most of the time, recovering her strength. Brought her food and checked her injuries, keeping a respectful distance. She did not talk much, and he did not push. But slowly things changed. It started when was fixing a coolant leak in the engine room. Appeared in the doorway, watching him work. She had gotten better at walking, though she still moved carefully. "You do all your own repairs?" she asked. Looked up from the tangle of pipes. "Can't afford a mechanic. Besides, I like knowing how things work." He gestured at the engine. "She's old, but she's reliable, mostly." Stepped closer, studying the setup. "Your power distribution is inefficient. If you rerouted the secondary lines through the upper manifold, you would gain 12% more thrust." Blinked, "You know ships." "I commanded a fleet." The words came out before she could stop them. She looked away quickly. Did not push, but something clicked in his mind. A fleet commander, military, high-level armor. No wonder she carried herself like royalty. "Well, Commander," he said lightly, "if you feel up to it, I wouldn't say no to some help." And that was how they started working together. New ship systems inside and out, and despite her weakened state, her mind was sharp. They spent hours in the engine room and cockpit, improving the Wildflower's performance. Found himself enjoying her company. She was serious and formal, but there were moments when she would almost smile at his jokes. The second week brought danger. They were passing through a border system when pirates showed up on the scanner. 3 ships, small but armed. They sent a demand: surrender cargo or be destroyed. "What cargo?" muttered. "I'm running empty." "They don't care," said from the co-pilot's seat. She had insisted on being there, wanting to help. "They'll board us and take whatever they want." "Yeah, well, they're going to be disappointed." His hands moved across the controls. "Hold on." The Wildflower jumped forward, pushing the engines hard. The pirates gave chase. Laser fire streaked past them, close enough to make the hull shudder. "They're faster than us," said, watching the scanner. "We cannot outrun them." "Don't need to outrun them, just need to outthink them." Grinned. He dove toward a nearby asteroid field. "Trust me on this." Gripped her seat as they plunged into the rocks. Asteroids rushed past, some as large as buildings. Flew like a madman, weaving and rolling, using every trick he knew. The pirates followed, but they were not used to this kind of flying. One clipped an asteroid and spun off course. Another got too close to its partner, and they had to break off to avoid collision. "Now," suddenly said, "hard right behind that cluster, cut engines." Did not question. He yanked the controls, killed the power. The Wildflower drifted silent behind a group of asteroids. The pirates flew past, searching, but their scanners could not find a ship with no power signature. They waited in silence for 10 minutes. Finally, the pirates gave up and left. Let out a breath. "Good call." "You fly well," admitted. "Crazy but well." "I'll take that as a compliment." He smiled at her. "We make a good team." Something passed between them then. A connection. Looked away first, but saw the faint color in her cheeks. The days became a routine. They flew during the day, navigating through safe routes that knew. At night, they would eat together in the small galley. Was still weak, still healing, but she grew stronger every day. And they talked. Told her about Earth, about growing up in Seoul, about joining the military and flying combat missions during the resource wars, about leaving it all behind to come to the frontier, where nobody cared about his past. "Why did you leave?" asked one evening. "Was quiet for a moment. Lost my whole squad in a bad operation. Command said it was necessary, called it acceptable losses." He looked at his hands. "I couldn't accept it. Couldn't keep fighting for people who saw soldiers as numbers." Understood that feeling. She had sent people into battle knowing some would not return. The weight of command was heavy. "And you?" asked. "Why become a soldier? You said you commanded a fleet. That's not something you just fall into." Hesitated. She had been careful not to reveal too much. But sitting here in the quiet warmth of his ship, the walls came down a little. "I was born into it," she said. "My family has served for generations. Duty was not a choice, it was expected." She paused. "But I wanted it too, wanted to protect people, wanted to matter." "You matter," said simply. "You're here, you survived, that matters." Felt something crack in her chest. For months in that prison she had felt like nothing, less than nothing. They had tried to break her and she had almost let them. But this human, this stranger who owed her nothing, had come into hell and pulled her out. "Why did you save me?" she asked quietly. "You didn't know who I was. I could have been anyone." Shrugged. "You were alive. You needed help, that's enough. Most people would not have risked it. They could have killed you." "Yeah, well," smiled. "Humans are stubborn that way. We don't like leaving people behind." Looked at him for a long moment. In the dim light of the galley, his face was open and honest. There was no calculation, no hidden motive. He had saved her because it was the right thing to do. That kind of simplicity was rare in her world. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." "You already thanked me." "I know, but I mean it." They sat in comfortable silence after that. Outside the viewport, the stars moved slowly past. By the third week, they were getting close to space, had recovered most of her strength. She moved with more confidence now, the warrior returning to her body. But the nightmares still came. Would wake to hear her crying out in her sleep, and he would go to her cabin and sit outside the door until she quieted. One night, she came to find him in the cockpit. He was running system checks, making sure everything was ready for the final leg of their journey. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Dreams," she said simply. She sat in the co-pilot seat. "They're getting worse the closer we get to home." "You scared?" "Yes." The admission seemed to cost her something. "I don't know what I'll find, if my people still need me, if I can still be who I was." Looked at her. In the starlight, her face was both strong and vulnerable. "You're not the same person who went into that battle. Nobody could go through what you did and stay the same." He paused. "But that's not bad. You're stronger now. You survived." "With your help." "Maybe, but you're the one who kept fighting. You didn't give up. That's all you." Felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "I wish we had more time." Understood what she meant. In another life, in other circumstances, maybe they could have been something. But she was going back to her world, and he belonged out here in the void. "Me too," he said quietly. They sat together in the cockpit, watching the stars, not saying anything else. Some things did not need words. The next day, Prime appeared on the scanner. The jewel world glowed in the distance, beautiful and bright. Home. Stood at the viewport, staring at it. Her home. Her mother was down there, her people, everything she had thought she lost. "We'll be there in 6 hours," said. "I can drop you at a quiet location if you want, somewhere discreet." No, his voice was firm. "You're coming with me all the way. I'm just a salvager. I don't belong in palaces." She turned to look at him. "You saved my life. You brought me home when no one else could. You belong wherever I say you belong." Started to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped him. This was important to her, and if he was honest, he was not ready to say goodbye yet either. "All right," he said, "we'll do it your way." Smiled, a real smile, the first one he had seen from her. It changed her whole face, made her look young and alive. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Palace guards at the landing platform did not believe her at first. Stood at the bottom of the wildflowers ramp with beside her. She wore clean clothes he had found for her, but they were plain, nothing royal. She looked like any other survivor of war. "I am Princess," she said to the guards. "I need to see Queen immediately." The guards exchanged glances. One of them, a young officer, stepped forward. "That's impossible. The princess died 3 months ago." "I did not die, I was taken prisoner, and now I am home." His voice carried the weight of command. "Run my identification codes, you will see." The officer hesitated, then pulled out a scanner. He ran it over his palm. The device beeped, processing. Then it beeped again, louder. The officer's face went pale. "Get Admiral," he said to another guard. "Now, and seal this landing platform. Nobody leaves." Within minutes, the platform was swarming with security. Stayed close to, feeling very out of place. These were elite soldiers, the kind who protected royalty. And here he was, a human salvager who had not showered properly in a week. Admiral arrived at a run. He was an older man, his face lined with years of command. When he saw, he stopped dead. "Princess," he breathed, "how is this possible?" "It is a long story," Admiral gestured to. "This man saved my life. He found me in a prison ship and brought me home." Looked at with new eyes. "You have my gratitude, human. The Empire owes you a debt." Then back to, "Your mother, she must be told immediately. She has been," he paused, "she has been in mourning." "Take me to her," said. They moved through the palace quickly, tried not to stare, but it was hard. The place was massive, all crystal and light, beautiful in a way that made Earth's buildings look crude. Servants and officials stopped to stare as they passed. Word was spreading fast. The princess' lives. They reached the queen's private chambers, knocked and entered. "Your Majesty, there is someone here to see you." Was at her desk, reviewing reports. She looked tired, older than expected, the kind of tired that came from grief. "Admiral, unless it is urgent, she looked up. Her voice died. Stepped into the room, "Mother." For a long moment, neither of them moved. They just stared at each other across the room. Then stood, her chair falling backwards. She crossed the distance in 3 steps and pulled into her arms. The queen, who had been stoned for 3 months, finally broke. She held her daughter and cried, deep sobs that shook her whole body. Cried too, clinging to her mother like she was drowning and was the only solid thing in the world. Looked away, giving them privacy. Did the same. This moment was not for them. When finally pulled back, she held his face in her hands. "How? They said you were dead. The ship was destroyed." "I was captured. They took me to a prison ship. They kept me alive for experiments." His voice was steady, but could hear the pain underneath. "I would have died there, but this man found me." Turned to see for the first time. He stood awkwardly near the door, trying to look like he belonged. The queen studied him with sharp eyes, human, young, wearing clothes that had seen better days. "You saved my daughter?" asked. "Yes, Your Majesty," bowed, unsure of the proper protocol. "I'm just glad I found her in time." Walked over to him. She was shorter than he expected, but there was power in her presence. She looked at him for a long moment, then bowed her head, a queen bowing to a salvager. "You have given me back my child," she said quietly. "There is no way to repay such a gift, but you will have anything you ask. Wealth, land, titles, whatever you wish." Shifted uncomfortably. "I don't need payment, Your Majesty. I did what anyone should do." Most would not have gone into territory. Most would not have risked their life for a stranger. Eyes were wet, but her voice was strong. "You are not like most." The news spread through the empire like fire. The princess lives. Within hours, it was on every screen, every broadcast. People in the streets celebrated. Ships in the fleet fired salutes. After 3 months of mourning, suddenly there was joy. But not everyone was happy. In the council chambers, the politicians whispered. How had a human succeeded where the military failed? What did this mean for the Empire's reputation? Some suggested must have had help, that maybe Earth had sent him. Others said the princess should have been found sooner, that command had failed. Heard the whispers. He saw the suspicious looks. He did not belong here, in this world of palaces and politics. He was just a salvager who had gotten lucky. That night he found on a balcony overlooking the city. She stood at the railing, looking out at the lights below. She looked different in royal clothes, more like the princess she was born to be. "I'm going to leave tomorrow," said quietly. Turned, "What, why?" "This isn't my world, I don't fit here." He gestured at the palace around them. "You have your mother back, you're safe, that's what matters." "You matter," stepped closer. "You saved my life, more than that. You gave me hope when I had none. You cannot just leave." "Your people don't trust me, I can see it in their eyes," smiled sadly. "And they're right to be suspicious. I'm nobody, just a human who got lucky." "You are not nobody." His voice was fierce. "You are brave and kind, and you risked everything for someone you did not even know. That makes you more than most people I have ever met." They stood close now. Could smell the perfume someone had given her, something floral and expensive. But underneath it, he could still smell the person he had spent 3 weeks with. The woman who had fixed his ship and laughed at his jokes and trusted him to bring her home. "I don't want you to go," said quietly. "I don't want to go either," looked at her face, memorizing it. "But I think it's better this way." Before could respond, alarms began to blare throughout the palace. Red lights flashed. In the distance could hear explosions. Admiral ran onto the balcony. "Your Highness, we're under attack. Ships have entered the system. Dozens of them. This is a full-scale assault." Appeared behind him, her face grim. "How did they get past our defenses?" "They came through multiple vectors. This was planned." Looked at. "They know you survived. They're coming to finish what they started." His face hardened. The princess became the commander. "Get me armor and weapons. I will not hide while my people fight." "You are still recovering," started. "Mother, I have been running and hiding for 3 months. Not anymore." Looked at. "Are you with me?" Should have said no. Should have run to his ship and gotten out of there. This was not his fight, not his world. But when he looked at the determination in her eyes, he knew he was not going anywhere. "I'm with you," he said. Above them, the sky lit up with weapons fire. The swarm had come to prime, and the real battle was just beginning. In the command center, watched the tactical displays with growing horror. 50 ships, maybe more. They were swarming the orbital defenses, overwhelming the fleet through sheer numbers. They were fighting hard, but they were outnumbered. "We cannot hold," said quietly, "not against this many." His hands gripped the edge of the console. She had just gotten her daughter back. She could not lose her again, could not lose everything. But then stepped forward. "What if we called for help?" "From where?" asked. "Our allies are too far away. They could not arrive in time." Smiled. It was the same crazy smile had seen before, when he flew into the asteroid field. The smile that said he had a plan nobody else would think of. "Not your allies," he said. "Mine." Ran to the communications array and started broadcasting on every human frequency he knew. Frontier channels, smuggler networks, mercenary bands. Anyone who might listen. "This is of the Wildflower," he said into the transmitter. "Prime is under attack. Massive assault. They need help. Anyone who can fight, anyone who owes me a favor, now is the time. Coordinates attached. Come ready for war." He sent the message and waited. Behind him shook his head. "Human ships are hours away at best. We will be overrun long before." The communications panel lit up, then again, and again. Dozens of responses coming in from all directions. You crazy bastard, this is on the Iron Phoenix. We're 20 minutes out. Hold on. Wildflower, this is Captain. You saved my crew at Rigel Station. We're coming. I told you that favor was for a drink, not a war, but fine. Dancing bear en route. More and more voices. Traders and smugglers and explorers. Humans who barely knew each other but all knew one thing. When someone called for help, you answered. Stared at the tactical display as new contacts began appearing on the edge of the system. Human ships jumping in from a dozen different locations. They were not military vessels. Some were cargo haulers. Others were mining ships with weapons bolted on. A few were actual warships, mercenaries and privateers. How many? She asked quietly. 40 ships, reported. No, 50 still counting. The human fleet, if you could call it that, did not form neat battle lines like proper military vessels. They came in scattered, disorganized, flying in ways that made pilots nervous just watching. But they came ready to fight. Now in combat armor stood beside her mother. They came for him, for. No, said. He was strapping on a flight harness getting ready to launch in the Wildflower. They came because it's the right thing to do. That's what humans do. He looked at, I'm going up there, you coming? Smiled, it was the warrior's smile, fierce and ready. Try to stop me. They ran for the launch bay together. Behind them, watched them go. A human salvager and her daughter, running toward danger like it was where they belonged. The battle in space was chaos. They fought with their usual precision, their ships moving in coordinated swarms. But the humans fought like, each ship doing its own thing, taking crazy risks that should not have worked. Iron Phoenix flew straight into a cluster of fighters, weapons blazing. Ship used a damaged freighter as cover, then popped out to deliver devastating surprise attacks. The Dancing Bear actually rammed a cruiser, its reinforced hull tearing through the enemy ship before pulling away, and flew together in a two-ship formation. The Wildflower and a fighter, moving like they had trained together for years. They covered each other, called out targets, fought as one. Behind you, his voice crackled over the comm. Rolled hard left as a beam cut through the space where he had been, swept in and destroyed the attacker. They had been flying together for less than an hour, but it felt natural. Right. On the ground, coordinated the defense with. The combined human fleet was holding, but barely. They kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. They're targeting the palace, said. A strike force is breaking through the orbital defense. All ships, this is Queen. Her voice went out across all channels. Protect the city. Do not let them reach the surface. The human ships responded immediately. They threw themselves at the strike force with complete disregard for their own safety. Ships were damaged, some destroyed, but they bought time for the fleet to regroup. In space, saw a wing of bombers heading for the palace. They were heavily armored, designed to deliver devastating payloads. If they got through, they would level entire city blocks. I've got an idea, said Tu. You're not going to like it. Tell me anyway. I'm going to fly into their formation, close range. When I give the signal, target my ship. What? That will destroy you. Trust me. Wanted to argue. Every instinct said this was insane, but she had learned to trust's crazy plans. All right, I trust you. Pushed the Wildflower to maximum speed, diving into the middle of the bomber formation. The adjusted, closing around him like a fist. He was surrounded, exactly where he wanted to be. Now, he shouted. Fired everything she had at the Wildflower. Her weapons tore into the small ship's shields, but had overcharged those shields, redirecting all power to them. The energy poured in did not destroy him. Instead, it reflected outward in all directions, a massive burst of focused power. The bombers, caught at close range, were shredded. The whole formation vanished in explosions. The Wildflower tumbled away, shields gone, hull smoking, but intact. You're crazy, said, her voice shaking with relief. I know, laughed, but it worked. The battle raged for another 2 hours. It was brutal and desperate. Both sides took heavy losses. But slowly, impossibly, the tide turned. The human ships, with their unpredictable tactics and refusal to give up, disrupted the coordination. The fleet, seeing their new allies fight so fearlessly, found renewed strength. And in the middle of it all, fought like she was born again. She was not the broken prisoner anymore. She was the princess, the commander, the warrior who would not fall. Finally, the fleet began to withdraw. They had taken too many losses, failed their objective. The swarm did not understand the concept of honor or pride, but they understood when a battle was lost. The human and ships let them go. They were too damaged to give chase. They had won, but it had cost them dearly. Limped the wildflower back to the palace landing platform. He practically fell out of the ship, exhausted, landed beside him and caught him before he collapsed. "We did it," he said. "We did," agreed. She was crying and smiling at the same time. Thank you for everything." The celebration came later. The palace was damaged but standing. The city had survived, and the people and human alike gathered to honor the fallen and celebrate the victory. Stood before the assembled crowd. Her voice was broadcast across the empire to all 17 star systems. "Today we were saved," she said, "not by our strength alone, but by the courage of unexpected allies. Humanity came to our aid when they had no obligation. They fought for us. Some gave their lives for us." She gestured to who stood with the other humans. He looked uncomfortable with the attention but stood beside him, and that made it bearable. "This human brought my daughter home when I thought she was lost forever, and when war came to our doorstep he called his people to stand with us. Humanity may be young in the stars, but they have shown us something ancient empires sometimes forget: the value of loyalty, the strength of compassion, the courage to fight for what is right." Paused, and when she spoke again, her voice rang with conviction. "Therefore, I offer humanity a formal alliance, not as subjects but as equals. Let our people stand together against the darkness. Let us build a future where no one is left behind, where courage and kindness matter more than age or power." The crowd erupted in cheers. Humans and together, celebrating not just victory, but the beginning of something new. Later, when the ceremonies were done and the crowds had dispersed, found himself on that same balcony where he had tried to say goodbye. Joined him, as he knew she would. So he said, "What now?" Now took his hand. "Now you stay if you want to. I'm a salvager. I don't belong in palaces. You belong wherever you choose to be." Looked at him. "And I would like you to choose to be here, with me." Looked out at the city below. It was beautiful, even with the damage. Lights were coming back on as repairs began. People were rebuilding, moving forward, the way people always did after war. He thought about the wildflower, damaged but repairable. He thought about the frontier, the freedom of space. He thought about all the reasons he should leave. Then he looked at the way she smiled at him, at the strength in her eyes and the hope in her face. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I can stay." Kissed him then, there on the balcony under the stars, and for the first time in a long time felt like he was home. Below them, the city rebuilt. Above them, human and ships flew patrols together. The war was not over. They would return. But now they would face something new. An alliance born not from treaties or politics, but from one human's refusal to leave someone behind. Queen watched from her chambers as the ships passed overhead. She thought about her daughter, lost and found. She thought about the dreams that had told her was alive, and how a human had made those dreams real. The universe was vast and full of darkness, but it was also full of light. Sometimes that light came from the most unexpected places. She smiled and turned back to her work. There was much to do, an alliance to formalize, a war to win, a future to build. But for now, for this moment, she allowed herself to feel joy. Her daughter was home, and they were no longer alone in the stars.